OMC, 3rd of July 2019.
Councillors, please. Councillor Dutton, you can move on to the breakfast.
Almighty God, we bid this as we work for the people of the Shire of Wirral. Grant us wisdom that we may care for the Shire as true stewards of your creation. May we be aware of the great responsibilities placed upon us and help us to be just in all our dealings, and may our work prosper for the good of all. Amen.
Respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, their spirits and their ancestors. Firstly, welcome to the gallery. Just a bit of housekeeping. For those that haven't been for a while, these council meetings are recorded. So they're running through the press, including the Star Weekly, the Rural News, and of course to try and get you on Facebook or Channel 9 News tomorrow morning, 60 minutes maybe. So, but just so you're aware, if you do speak, that you are being recorded. So thank you. So, apologies. We have an apology from who we got? Councillor Edwards and Councillor Toohey. So at this point we'll move to someone to move the ordinary minutes of the last meeting, please. And the special meeting.
I'll move.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Those in favour? So carried. Now we'll do the special meeting.
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Dudley. Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Those in favour? So carried. So at this point I'll ask if there's any conflicts of interest on tonight's proceedings on any of the items placed on the agenda. No, not at this point. Right. So having done that, we'll move into the public questions on which we have one speaker, Nicole Finn. Thank you, Nicole. If you could just come up to the table and
Yeah, my table's okay? This
yeah,
side of the table?
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. So mayors, councillors and CEO of the Wirral Shire Council, on behalf of the residents of Connor Court and Balan, we wish to thank you for your consideration of this important matter affecting our lives. As many of you are aware, Connor Court faces severe flooding during our rainy months of the year. This is due to a number of factors, including spoon drains, considered acceptable of a rural area, channeling an exceptionally large amount of water from a sizable catchment through a street that is unequipped and unmaintained to safely disperse the water. Putting it simply, our street's drainage is not sophisticated enough to safely manage the volumes it faces when it does rain. The low-lying nature of our street in comparison to surrounding streets, adjustment to the drainage of Blakeville Road and surrounding hills, directing the stormwater runoff of the surrounding streets into ours, the need for water to cross under our road through a rather small pipe before flowing beneath the Balan-Greendale Road through much larger stormwater drains, the failure of continuation of the watercourse beyond its original crossing of the Balan-Greendale Road. However, I must mention that the owner of the property I refer to here is willing to meet and discuss drainage issues with council. As individuals, our street have approached council on a number of occasions about the constant flooding of our street. Despite our representations, the matter remains unresolved. Specifically, our records indicate our street has been flooded, and we define this as significant water across the road on no less than 3 times in 2010, again in early 2011, 3 times in 2016. On one occasion, a property was threatened with inundation and the SES was called to assist. Twice in June of this year, and again on Saturday just past. Council employees have advised Connor Court residents that our street floods 1 in 100 years. This should equate to being unsafe once in a century. By our calculations, our street is flooding more frequently than 1 in 100 years. In fact, we're talking about flooding many times a year. At each of these times of flooding, we are aware that emergency services vehicles will not attend to a call out in our street when there is water across the road. It isn't safe for them, and it isn't safe for us to drive through floodwaters. We can appreciate that the cost of rectifying such a significant issue through installation of covered stormwater drains. However, after these flooding events, water remains in and around our street for many weeks after the rain has ceased. As one of the many parents of young children in our street, stagnant water is a significant risk for our children. Drowning by death remains one of the leading causes of death in children under 5 years in Australia. Large puddles of water is an exciting adventure to children, but it can be deadly. During flooding of this year in June, some residents were unable to access their property as the water was moving too quickly across the road to ensure safe passage. You will no doubt be aware that our street is fortunate to host the regional school bus service. We're also the last free stop on this service, which sees parents from surrounding communities park their vehicles in a street whilst awaiting the collection of their child. The bus stop itself sits directly in front of a large stormwater drain that takes water under Ballan-Greendale Road. This is an unsafe situation during times of flood. We recognise that this is a difficult situation. However, it is not a safe one for our residents of our street, and we seek to bring this important issue to your attention. We welcome the opportunity to meet with you and discuss this in greater detail. We believe there is a solution and seek your assistance as our elected representatives to resolve this in a timely manner. We are constantly reminded in government campaigns that if it's flooded, forget it. However, we plead, please do not forget us. Thank you.
Any questions, Councillor? I believe that document's been tabled.
Yes.
By you, so I'm sure we'll come back to it. Oh, have you got a response, John? Please, if you would, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do have a response. In regards to the question that was submitted, so the IDM guidelines are basically a local guide for local government supported by technical requirements and specifications. And they look at such things as drainage systems, pavement construction, drainage in subdivisions is generally set for a 1 in 5 year event, and that's for a pipe network generally, while overland flows are generally a 1 in 100 year event. Connor Court was developed prior to the introduction of the IDM guidelines, and hence that subdivision wasn't built to those specifications. Council officers are aware of the issue with water inundation around the area of Connor Court, and are currently investigating the issue and what options there are to alleviate the situation. Any solutions are likely to be extensive drainage works, and this will be referred to future capital programs for that work.
We welcome that. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Okay, we have another speaker, Stephen Kelly. You have 2 questions, I believe. So you just say your name and your address and where you're from.
Stephen Kelly, 15 Moore Street, Ballan. This is all in relation to the proposed local law number 1, 2019. The first one was, please, I hereby request that a public meeting be called by the Moorabool Shire Council to explain to the interested ratepayers the proposed changes to the above legislation with regard to implications including flexibilities and liabilities in the changes for ratepayers at a date which allows adequate time thereafter for submissions to be prepared and presented before the closing date.
Would you like me to answer that one first, if you like, and we'll go to the next one, Mr. Singleton?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the draft local law 2019 was publicly advertised to the community on our website 2 times previously. The community impact statement, which talks about what we have done differently and what's new, was also advertised as part of that, and it's also available at present. So there is also further opportunity will be when the local law is presented back to council, the public wants to address it, that could be looked at as well.
Thank you, Mr. Singleton. Mr. Kelly, do you want to go to your second question, please?
Under the same Local Law Number 1, 2019. It is my understanding that the Shire officer responsible, Mr. Andy Gaze, is on leave and will not return to work until the 8th of July. In my opinion, this does not allow concerned residents, ratepayers, sufficient time to confer with him and then prepare a submission regarding the changes. I hereby request that the closing date for the above proposal be extended to allow discussions with Mr. Gaze to take place so that submissions may be prepared and presented prior to the closing date. Please refer to my accompanying request on the same issues. We have not had access to the documentation really here. We've had a 50-page document put here. We do not know what other letters have been written. We don't know much about it. And with Mr. Gaze away, we've got no means of really finding out until after he comes back to work.
Mr. Sanders.
Mr. Mayor, while Mr. Gaze is on leave, there is other staff member who is responding to all inquiries regarding the local law. Council officers also have been in discussion with Mr. Kelly during this advertising period.
Mr. Sanders, could we possibly organise it? We've got
I'm
something
happy to have a meeting with Mr. Kelly, myself, and discuss
okay.
any further. Happy to do that.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders.
Can I have a reply, please also in writing as to how we stand over both of those, please?
Yes, I'll do that.
And when can I see you?
I'll let you guys organise that.
Okay.
We'll get on with it.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
No,
Thank you,
my pleasure.
Councillor.
Okay, righto, we'll move on to item 11.1.1,
I'm not sure when I can come up.
consideration of proposed 1920 annual budget.
I'm happy to make the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Dutton. Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Any objections? Councillor Dutton.
The budget has been prepared well by our staff. The improvements are much needed. The submissions received have been responded to in the large part, and it's a sensible budget for the upcoming year.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm reluctant to sort of oppose a budget given the amount of work that has been put in place here, but I find it a bit difficult when we have a situation where we can't even improve or maintain the basic level of services for the majority of residents in this municipality, and yet we're now talking, one of the part of new issues, of an art and culture officer. And I think that surely you've got to raise the level of the base before you start going for items like this. And I think it's not reasonable that people don't have a decent road, there are people who don't have a decent footpath, and yet we're going down this path, as many councils have done before us, but I still don't think it's a reasonable or equitable to do that type of activity or employ a person that we don't actually have people lifted up to a certain level of standard. For that reason, I oppose the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The appointment of a arts and culture officer, I believe, will contribute to the social well-being of our community, to both employment and leisure. It will certainly add value. The arts officer it's a two-edged sword. There is social benefits and there is also economic opportunity. If you look in the submissions that we had 24 submissions to the budget. 10 of them were in favour of the employment of an arts officer. I also note that this year we are spending 102% of our depreciation on our infrastructure. The amount of money that's put aside for the arts officer, a part-time job, is very, very small compared to the overall budget. And it is extremely small when you look at our, I think we're the only council in Victoria that's spending our complete amount on depreciation. and I commend council to ensure that we do have this arts officer. And I noticed too that one of the submissions, if you'll grant me the time, I'd like to read it out. The arts are more than a self-expression or a piece of work that is pleasant to look at. The benefit of arts reach far and wide into education, economic vitality, health and well-being and social cohesion. And another submitter said that arts can be a powerful economic driver and contribute significantly to the improved success in tourism. And also, Mr Mayor, I like to get out and about, say, once a fortnight into our other municipalities to see what they're doing. And if you go to a place like Hepburn, Shire of Hepburn, on a Friday, Saturday or a Sunday night, you cannot get a park in the main street of the town. The tourism industry is hot and running, and there's many young folk employed in the tourism industry. It's exactly the same thing in Castlemaine. I was there they have a week arts festival. It was finished there 3 weeks ago, and once again you couldn't get a park in Castlemaine. A month ago I attended a concert in Clunes, run by the Shire of Hepburn Arts Officer. You could not get a parking spot in the main street of Clunes. Every tourist operation was going flat out, and there was a lot of young folk employed. And I see that if we can get our arts community up and running, I cannot see why we can't attract all those type of tourists here to see what our culture's like. Where at the moment, if you walk down the main street of Glen or Bacchus Marsh at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, if you find a shotgun, you wouldn't hit anybody. Whereas in those other towns that I've mentioned, the place is absolutely buzzing. And there's other municipalities further away. For example, Wangaratta have a jazz festival that is now internationally known. When the jazz festival is on for the week, you just cannot park anywhere. It's because there is that many people there. And I really do believe that if we can get our arts and culture moving going, we are going to see straight away we're going to employ more young folk, and that's what I'm really about. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Short and sweet, there's not much more to add as opposed to what's already been added, but I'd just like to say out of the submissions, ultimately they're compounded down into 7 different topics, and it is refreshing to see that all those 7 have been adequately addressed and have been resolved in this budget. So I'm in favour of it.
Councillor W, close it off, please.
It's a good budget, so congratulations to the staff. I'm very pleased about the improvements to Mason's Lane Reserve. They've been waiting a long time for that, and it's very important. Arts, I think it is time that Liverpool has the chance to mature, and it is another form of economic development and health and wellbeing that we can enhance in our community. So I recommend the budget.
Okay, we'll take it to vote. Those in favour? Motion carried. That's no.
I'm not for or against.
Yeah, I knew I got that. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say those against one vote.
I wouldn't do that to you, Councillor.
I know it's going to do that.
Okay, let's move on to 11.1.2, the adoption of 2017-21 Council Plan 2019 revision.
Happy to move, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Just let me finish.
Second.
Thank you.
Just have a couple of questions.
Yes, if you, Councillor Sullivan.
Just on page 78 of the agenda, or 36 of that attachment, it just notes that employee cost index in line with the 3-year enterprise bargain agreement includes allowances for banding. What's the actual dollar figure for that?
about 1%. That's an additional 1%. That's the impact of people moving through the various bandings within our enterprise agreement.
Councillor.
So, yeah, hang on, that's not, it's just sort of, it's more than 1%, because if you look over the page, on page 79, we have the projected years, rates increasing 7%, 5%, 5%, expenditure employee across 3, 4, and 5. And so, and in this constrained environment, how do we go able to manage with those costs?
Steve.
Mr. Chair, one of the key aspects of our the budget that underpins our financial sustainability is a long-term financial plan. We've got a 10-year financial plan, and that really ensures that the key metrics going forward, we've spoken about asset renewal, growth, tenement growth, increases in staff costs are all included in the context of our strategic financial plan. And it's probably important to note that it's demonstrating over time that our financial capacity as an organisation has improved, and based on the very, prudent decisions that the council has made over many years, that's likely to improve over time also.
Any further questions?
Yeah, just another one.
Yes.
Just on page 82, last paragraph, it says that council has a number of major projects that will be progressing over the next 5 years, including the Bacchus Marsh Racecourse and recreation upgrade. Council's forecast in excess of 25 mil. How much have we spent outside of the racecourse reserve?
Is that one for you, Steve, or Mr. Ward?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, through you, I don't quite understand.
Well, if you go to page 82 of the report, of 201, in the last paragraph you've got the council's forecast in excess of $25 million expenditure across its major projects, which will include the racecourse reserve. The question I'm asking, how much is going to be spent outside of the racecourse reserve on the 25 million?
I'll have to take that on notice, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions? So we've moved to the second. Any objections? Those in favour? So carried. So we'll move on to 11.2.1, which is the Bacchus Marsh Lane Open Space Framework.
So the question.
Yes, Councillor.
Just in the body of the report, in page 89, under guiding principles, this was discussed at an assembly, and I'm not quite sure why it's kept here, continued. The fourth dot point, in existing areas of Bacchus Marsh and Glen, public open space must, the word must. I thought we had discussion that should rather than must. So why is must here after that discussion about getting it should rather than must?
I do agree with that, Councillor. Some of it was just missed that, so we rectify that.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Mayor. With your
Mr. In the document it has been amended, it just left in the report, so yes.
Okay, so the actual documents weren't already been done? Yeah. Terrific. Any other questions? Okay, with your hands, yes.
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Second. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Any objections? Those in favour? So carried. Okay, the next item, I'm seeking leave to put an amendment or a motion forward. So I'd ask if Councillor Keogh can take the chair. There are some speakers as well, so you may have to refer to this before. Does that have to be moved to the secretary?
Do you want it on? I assume the process would be that we still hear the speakers first and then
unfortunately, Mr. Estelle is unwell and won't be able to make it.
Is there someone else to speak in your place?
It's still open, so. Sorry,
Is that okay if I sit down? Thank you. My name's Chris Marshall. I'm from TGM Group. I put the application together for the rezoning application for 135 to Ballamy Road, Milan. Appreciate the opportunity to go up the talk. Just a way of background, the application seeks to rezone 90 hectares of a 270 hectare lot. Part of this land is already rural living zone. It proposes to rezone that area of land to rural living zone. And it's actually, councillors, an extension of the existing rural living zone, which is basically exists on both sides of the area. Indeed, they've been designed such that there's road connections between the two rural zones in this particular land. So there's opportunities to integrate it. Just way of background, councillors, we were invited by a former strategic planner, Lisa Gabasconi, about 4 or 5 years ago to put an application to rezone the land at Ballany. As in the council report, the application was lodged and it was referred to various authorities. At that time, we received an objection from Western Water, who were concerned about the septic systems because the application was based on putting septic systems in the ground. We then had a discussion with council and Western Water and investigated any sewerage options that we could use that wouldn't impact on the catchment area of Melbourne, of course. We found an opportunity to be able to, we've validated that, to actually hook the land up to the existing reticulated system in the land fairly simply. So we duly advised council of that. At that time there was a change of planners and Rod Davidson, and I think Mr Goodsall was there at the time. They did raise concerns about the strategic justification. We had a meeting with the officers, Mr Davidson, Mr Goodsall and the manager of planning at the time to discuss what we could do. We undertook, councillors, an investigation into lot supply in the land area, which we note that the council report doesn't refer to. We actually employed Essential Economics, who council's actually employed to do their lot supply analysis before. And we provided this as part of the application, which we note hasn't been referred to in the council report, unfortunately, when they've looked at lot supply. The conclusion of this application is that the rural living supply in the land is low and can be provided, and basically they supported a rezoning of the land within this. So I'm happy to provide that to council if they don't have a copy. Once we did that, we provided that to council officers who were asked for additional information requests. We provided a number of reports including agricultural capability assessment, fire management assessment, heritage assessment, a flora extract from DELP as instructed by council, and a servicing report which provides also a number of, not only validates the land can be serviced, but also provides a chapter about storm water, which the planning officer hasn't obviously read because it's actually, they've said the application lacks a storm water strategy. So we've actually provided that in December of 2018. Since that time, in 7 months, we haven't received a reply until we received the council report, which basically then, to our surprise, criticised parts of the application which we hadn't even received any correspondence from council officers about. So we're really disappointed with that, given that we made ourselves available and so forth, and only finding out now that they have a few issues which we'd actually like to counter. In regard to that, the planning report talks about the lack of strategic report and refers to the Ballany strategic directions, which has got nothing to do with the application. Ballany strategic directions has a lot to do with, or all to do with, establishing the town boundary of the land and not looking at rural living supply in the land. We also, the report fails to acknowledge the council's own clause for rural lifestyle opportunities, which is 21036, which talks about how rural land should be developed and so forth. which we say this land ticks all the boxes, including being serviced, being close to opportunities for services and so forth, commercial and community services, and not being in the way of future development of the town. We weren't also aware that council received any advice from DELP in January and February, which, well, we actually went and spoke to DELP and they said that council received advice in January, the report says February, so we don't know what's what. So we're really, again, disappointed that in January, February, advice from DELP wasn't provided to us about their concerns about the strategic justification. And in regard to the officer's basically summary of land supply, as I said, we've actually got a 2017 land supply document that hasn't been referred to, hasn't been looked at, that the officer hasn't bothered to basically reference in a balanced way. It also fails in council's supply analysis, also fails to understand that the majority of existing rural living land can't be developed because it's actually in catchment area. And so to develop it and put septic systems basically will be objected to by the water authority. The report acknowledges that we can sewer the land. Unfortunately, the report talks about our heritage report having problems, but the report actually concludes that the subdivision can be supported. The report has our application has a bushfire management report, but basically council officers have said, well, this hasn't been referred to the CFA. Well, we don't do the referral. It's actually council officers who should be doing the referral. It also casts doubt our agricultural sustainability report. Well, we've actually sought someone with qualifications in agricultural science to look at the land, who advised that the land is low-grade rural land. Despite all these things, the benefits of the proposal is that actually the rezoning and basically subdivision of the land will not only provide diversity of lots for people who have look at this part of the Shire for rural living opportunities, it also provides what we say is a high benchmark in future rural living opportunities, because it allows an application, a subdivision of land for rural living to have serviced reticulated sewages and services. It also provides, which accords with the council's own policy, an opportunity for rural living opportunities close to services of the town without impacting on the town, because it's actually on this other side of the highway. All these requirements are actually consistent with clause 2103(6) of rural lifestyle opportunities. When we say, council, that we're disappointed in the slant of the report, which discredits part of our application without any opportunity to even talk to council officers about it. It's gone to council, and we think that council should support the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Mr.
Questions? Did you have questions against this idea there? Covered it fire up and you'll start. You go first, you're right.
Yes, attached.
Righto. Through the chair, when you received the advice from council officers on the 26th of August 2016 raising concern about the lack of strategic justification, what to continue with the application?
Well, we expressed disappointment that the application has been with the council for over a year. I never received that advice. I actually invited to put the application in. And then we had a discussion with 3 of the people involved in the planning department, that it was agreed to that we would look and seek advice, independent advice, about whether we could justify additional rural living land for Ballan. And hence, we actually used council's own consultant, Essential Economics, and asked them could they investigate whether there's a need for other rural living land lots in the area as justification for us to go forward. And in fact, if councillors read that report, they'll see that it basically supports additional rural living. And as I said previously, it actually looks at the rural living opportunities in around Ballan and shows that they're actually, most of them are constrained being in a catchment area.
Do you want me to go cancel something? Or,
Yeah.
I've got a bit for.
Oh, well, I'll just
Just be polite.
Thank you. In the plan that's attached to the report that we have, it has 2 hectare lots. Currently, under the rural planning scheme, the minimum subdivision lot size in the rural living thing is 6. So you're actually proposing not only for a rezoning to rural living, but to change the schedule, correct?
That's correct. Councillor.
So, and the other question I have, Mr. Acting Chair, what do you base your presumption that you can't develop outside if it's in the water catchments?
Our own experience as a planning group,
What do you base it on now that Rural has a wastewater management plan and reached agreement with the water authorities?
our advice back looking at putting septic systems in a water catchment. Additional sewage septic systems
Since the introduction of the domestic wastewater management
in the last
plan?
couple of years, Councillor, yes.
So that'd be before the domestic wastewater management
I'm
plan?
not sure when your wastewater management
The
plan was
last couple of
introduced.
years.
Yeah, so our experience in a water catchment is the catchment authority and the water authority have been deterred any additional septic systems. Sorry, I'm going to skip that out.
Well, that's not my experience. Thank you.
Councillor Thatcher.
Do you have any response to the officer's assessment of land supply? It was fairly heavily documented in the report.
As I said, their land supply, we have a proper land supply done by consultants. Their land supply doesn't question, they look at the zone and say there's a rural living zone around parts of the land, but it hasn't gone any further. So the question is, why hasn't it gone any further? The issues are of servicing and so forth, that we understand that we were actually, the response that came back to us from Western Water was the same response, that they didn't want additional on-ground sewage treatment. They wanted sewage because of issues of impacting on the catchment.
Did you have another answer, Sullivan?
No,
Thank you. When you provided that additional information back on 13 December 2018, did you receive any feedback or concerns raised by council officers regarding the content of the information?
No, not at all.
Nothing? Not a note?
No, we had a meeting,
Well,
and at the meeting we were advised that we were going to get a response, and we never got a response.
Okay. Can I'll sort of cut this. Were you aware of the DWAP advice received January 2019?
Sorry, that
Were you notified or were you aware of the DWAP advice received in January 2019?
no, we went to see DELPA ourselves, and DELPA advised us a couple of weeks ago. The council actually received the letter. As I said, they referred to it being January. I see in the report it says February. They didn't provide us with a copy of the letter. They provided us with an extract of the letter. And yeah, we're disappointed, Councillor, that we actually didn't receive that advice.
You would have got some advice, they would have notified you something.
No, we didn't receive that advice.
And my final question is, so what are the benefits of this application to our region?
Well, as I said previously, the benefits are it's an establishment of a rural living subdivision that's actually serviced. To actually look at the relevant clauses and also the relevant practice notes in regard to rural living development, it actually requires that rural living is serviced and doesn't have environmental impacts in that regard. And so this, as I said, application basically establishes a benchmark for future rural living, and it won't have an impact on the catchment areas surrounding Ballan.
I've got a couple of questions of officers as well, if I may. Sorry. First one is to Mr. Singh, through the chair. Was this document the soil suitability report of 135 Ballan Road, Ballan, that was authored by Jim Shackleton? Was that made available during this process or during this report? Was that made available, one, to your officers and two, to councils in determining decisions?
Through the chair, the officers are aware of this report.
Well, the supplementary question is, after reading the report, it seems implausible it's not reflected in the report. It's not noted. So we've got a document that's been authorised and authored by someone with some note. Would it be reasonable to suggest that could be put into the report so that we know that there is a report to be read? It's now a public report.
Through you, Chair, I will just point out a couple of things. First of all, if you look at the soil suitability, it talks about the soil suitability report is prepared by the applicant state, neither is existing. So the paragraph does talk about that in the report. And also, furthermore, there was a question raised about the essential economics report not being mentioned. Again, that paragraph again in the supply saying, to support the applicant has provided council with the residential supply line analysis in June 27. So we are not actually mentioning the report name as such, but we are saying these reports are being submitted and the dates they are submitted in the report. So we are mentioning these reports.
Would you agree that, Mr. Secretary, that they are produced when you read the context of the Meridian report and then transcribe across to the actual heading of soil suitability, that there is some disparity in the two reports in terms of the response? Would you agree with that?
So, Chair, I'm a bit confused with the question, sorry.
Well, with all due respect, Mr. Secretary, this report is very detailed in terms of the problems that are associated with the Ballina estate, in particular where this subdivision is proposed, that has some fairly detailed documentation on it in terms of one on its viability, and it's not reflected in the same report. I guess say that water gets us off.
No, it wasn't. I was just trying to
Oh, right, I'm trying to get
Chair's attention.
Right. So my concern is that without the benefit of that report, you know, when you read that, it reads a different story than the bylines and the paragraphs within the actual report that's come to a conclusion to the further matter. So I'm concerned that the amount of information that was provided, whether it's been pulled apart enough to be put into some sort of context, to an understanding, because there has been a lot of discussion, particularly around this particular development about farmland, and yet this report actually is the key to that. That's what concerns me. But having said that, we can move on. Could I ask again, and there is another report, were you aware of the Blair Rural Living Zone Supply and Demand analysis that was prepared in June 2017, which once again, when it's referred to the actual body of the report, there seems to be, it's either been cherry-picked or it's chosen. I'll take that back to the chair. Cherry-pick's not a good term for chair. My concern is that based on the information in the report, I'm not saying it's misleading, but what I am saying is that there's not enough information within the report to take a value judgment. Would you agree with that, Mr. Secretary? Have you got a copy of it?
Yeah, no, sorry, I've got a copy of it. Through you, Chair, first of all, I'm saying that we have considered the report, and it's already mentioned in that report is being looked at from that perspective. Even the previous question that Councillor, you talked about the soil suitability, we are not challenging the soil suitability. We're saying in our report, we are saying this, the land is not suitable for intensive agriculture, will not be suitable for road agriculture. So we are saying that. So we're not challenging. It's more the justification from that perspective and looking at the strategic justification altogether. That's what we're looking at. So.
I'll respond to that through the chair.
Yes.
I'm quite happy to suggest that in on the soil suitability on the first 4 lines, you actually go to that document without mentioning it. But then on the next 4 lines, you actually conclude by saying that based on the information that you have, the report that goes on to the state that there is no reason why the remaining balance of the site cannot be used for grazing at a reasonable level of intensity. This report appears to be conflicting as to the extent to which the existing farm zone land is viable farming. That would be a matter of opinion, not reflected in the report while we're in. Would you suggest that's correct?
Definitely.
Thank you. So My final question, sorry through the chair, and sorry to other councillors, because I think it's important, especially as the ward councillors read, that, of course, a lot of this discussion with the report talks to justification. And when you pull out 21.03.6 of the rural planning scheme, there's a list of items there that actually, when compared to the application, it's very hard not to tick a box on each item. And if I could go through with the indulgence of council, just so that we're clear, I'll keep prevent the fragmentation of farmland through inappropriate subdivision. Well, that's a fair point. I think we're all aware of that. Limit rural lifestyle development in areas without articulated services where development would compromise water quality, particularly in the special water supply catchments, adversely affecting agricultural production or impact to native vegetation of habitat values. Well, the sewerage answers that in terms of the planning scheme. Provide for planning rural living development in appropriate locations in recognition of the attractiveness of the rural lifestyle option. Well, we're looking for a zoning application, so we don't know what's going to look like yet. That's a lot further down the track. This is an amendment to go to the minister as part of the plan. I hope I'm not leading into a debate here. You call me up if you want to, Mr. Chair. I'm quite happy to put up on this. For those who haven't got a copy, there is a list of items which, when you consider the original application, it would be hard pressed to say they couldn't be challenged. More importantly, on 21.03.7, we look at the implementation, which is actually the guts of any planning scheme document. Now, I'm not pretending to be a planner, but councils have to deal with this in terms of the public, what we look like. So when you look at the implementation and you go through those items line by line by line, you'll actually know that nowhere in any of those is Palan, Ballina or the northern side mentioned, which would stand to reason that if it wasn't mentioned as part of the implementation, that obviously it's not an issue. Would you suggest that to be the case?
Councillor Tatchell, this will be the last question because you're debating them and there's no motion yet.
Well, I've got to wait while I could through the chair. So, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Marshall, as part of your presentation, you were sort of suggesting there's been lack of opportunity to respond to some of this information that's been forthcoming. Is it worth considering delaying this until you have a more fulsome opportunity to respond to these points?
Councillor, we're able to, if council find, the way strategic planning works, and I do a lot of rezoning applications, if there are any issues that could be resolved, whilst the council support the application, those issues can be resolved and then the application can go to DELWP. So we don't see that the issues that council have raised are insurmountable in regard to...
Sorry, no, it wasn't. You, in your presentation, you indicated that you hadn't had the opportunity to respond to this. So what I'm suggesting or asking, is there a desire to defer this until such time as you get the opportunity to respond fully to the ability to respond that you'd be comfortable with?
My client would like, because we've been waiting for about 4 or 5 years, would like the application to be supported, and those matters we think can be resolved upon ongoing.
Thank you.
Any more questions? No more questions? Oh, Mr. McFall next. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Joe McFall, I'm a local real estate agent, and I live at 53 Edolph Street, Bland. There's one 5-acre block for sale in Bland. Supply and demand. There's no lifestyle blocks for sale in Bland. Supporting the application.
Thank you, Mr. McFall. Thank you, Mr. McFall. I'm sure there'll be no questions for such a simple... Well,
Almost got past.
Just a question of I'd just like to recognize the question of officers. I do note that generally with the process of rezoning, there has to be strategic justification in the MSS plans. Is that not the case? In your professional view, is there justification for rezoning of this parcel of land currently?
Through you, Chair, that was the reason why we have drafted the recommendation the way it is. We are of a view that there needs to be further more works needs to be done. If we had some sort of a document which outlining some of the land use strategies, it would be easily supported. Yes, there is a debate about demand analysis and all that, which the applicant has provided that, but we are saying that in totality, it will be better for council that we had this strategic document available to suit that justification.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions?
Can I put forward my motion?
Yes, Councillor Thatcher.
I waited the preamble, I think it'll be sick of my voice. My alternative motion on item 11.2.2. Request for authorisation of planning scheme amendment C87, 135 Ballina Road. The land. The following proposed motion has been suggested by me, Councillor Paul Tatchell, circulated to Council for their consideration. That Council 1 authorise the General Manager of Community Planning to finalise the planning scheme amendment documents in consultation with the proponent and relevant agencies as required. Item 2, request authorisation from the Minister of Planning to prepare and exhibit Rural Planning Scheme Amendment C87 in accordance with Section 8A2 of the Planning and Environmental Act of 1987, and 3, furthermore, subject to receiving authorisation from the Minister of Planning publicly exhibit Amendment C87 in accordance with the Planning and Environment Act of 1987 and a report be presented to Council following completion of the exhibition of please.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a second? Nobody got any objection?
It's got it, yeah, I would.
Councillor Thatcher.
Look, I'm not going to cut along about the planning scheme. My concerns are that when we talk about justification, and we talk about the different agencies that deal with this, and they give their justification, it's a very simple process, but they rely on people that live on the ground, people that live in these areas. If we start to rely on bureaucrats in Spring Street to determine our futures in terms of the planning act, and then write reports that suit those reports, inevitably we're going to have a problem. It's clearly noted in the report that if this gets deferred tonight and we have to put in a rural living strategy, which we all agree that we need to do, that we are unlikely to get a result until 2021, which will put us another 2 years at least by the time the application process comes through, before we have any rural living blocks. The reality is we've had a real estate agent coming today and say we have 1 5-acre block in this whole district. But if we want to go to report just to justify all this and make it very clear why we need this to happen today, it's very, very simple. Because as you go through the report and you match it up against our own planning scheme, which is the thing we rely on, it comes up with a whole heap of issues. What we're asking for is an amendment here to go to the Minister to see if it'll come back. The misnomers within the report are cleared by the actual documentation that comes with the report, but not presented with the report. So you have to go and dig for this stuff to find out how. Let's be clear that when we did the Belair strategy plan that we adopted, it took nearly 10 years, had 5 hands all over it, and I still don't believe we had a result. The reason why we are saying in this report that we are short on rural living blocks is we're taking into consideration the Fraser land. And I just want to put that into some sort of perspective. That's in the main street. Rural living is about the boundaries that exist outside of that urban area of your country town. We should define it. And I can tell you that having known the previous owner of Ballina and broken bread with him on more than one occasion, and we're talking about John Grossi, who was the 2IC of Lang Hancock, probably the best land guy in this country. If it hadn't been for Lang Hancock, this country wouldn't be where it is today. He was his 2IC, owned 2 properties in the Margaret River and another one in Adelaide. Absolutely the best. He knew dirt. He knew what you could make money out of. He knew what you could farm. That is not the issue with this case. We are looking to put a boundary in on a dream of John Ross's from 20 odd years ago, when we see the 5-acre blocks on the other side of the freeway that were being condemned on the basis that we could not have a septic tank system through that property, through those properties, so we needed sewage. This whole argument started when the application came in and there was no mention of the sewage. When the sewage was finally mentioned, because 5 people had their hands all over the document, all of the initial concerns were being carried over as luggage into the final bit. We're saying by putting the sewage in, and let me tell you, if anyone who drives over the other side of the freeway will understand that the 5, 10, 15 acre, 20 acre plots are exactly what we need. Every day, walking as a rural councillor over the last 6 years, someone will say, whatever you do, don't let the land look like Bacchus Marsh. And here we are, we cut up land willy-nilly all through the town every day. Every time we come to a council meeting, someone's cutting up a piece of land. The actual scope for what we want in rural living is exactly this. The reason I came to land here 27 years ago, exactly this. I got 10 acres that I bought when I came here 26 years ago, built a house on, where I was going to drop punter to hit the main street. 26 years later, that's changed. Those 10 acre blocks that are within kicking distance of the main street are no longer there. We don't have it. The suggested phrases are on it. I've been hearing about phrases since Methuselah. They haven't done a thing. And if you were going to put a rural living block, why would you include as paradox to the argument that needs to be into the land structure plan when it's rural living? It doesn't belong in there anyway. And at this point in time, we don't have anything. We don't have squat. Keep the land rural, one step forward. They argued this for 5 years. Whatever you do, Catch, make sure that we stay rural in the main street. What are they doing today? They're trying to have that reverse so they can cut it up because everyone else has been urbanised. The fact is, we come here to put in rural living blocks. We don't have them. We have an incomplete half service set up over at Ballina where we did have rural living, which is owned here already. So we're trying to just complete the roundabout and make it work. That's why people come and live in the country. I came to the country. There's no way I could live in suburbia. No one would put up with it. But the reality is, if you've got a couple of horses or your kids want to ride a motorbike, or you've got a small business with a bobcat and an excavator, you don't belong in town. You need to be on one of these 5 acre blocks. And we've seen the arguments at Hopeton Park for exactly that reason. All I'm suggesting is, had we had this information in 2015, 2016, you can guarantee it would have been discussed and it certainly would have been lobbied. Here we are today, we've known about it for 3 or 4 months. And now we run the risk of running this out to 2021 when clearly by our own planning scheme, we've hit every mark on this particular application, and we're only sending the Minister for amendment. This is not building anything out there. It's purely to expand our boundaries so we can increase our economic activity, to bring more people to our town so that we can increase our shopping centres, to make sure they're going all right, make sure our schools are going all right, make sure our bus service is sustainable. That's all because of these people. And I can tell you this, if anyone who goes out there and looks at these rural living blocks just outside the boundaries of the land, most of those kids that grew up there when I came here 26 years ago are still friends with my kids and are moving back trying to buy those blocks because they want that safe lifestyle, that healthy lifestyle as opposed to living in suburbia. So I know Councillor Summers going to put up a very good argument on this. So I've got to come back with the symbols. But at the end of the day, I put it to the chair. We can continue to be pushed around by the Spring Street bureaucrats and try and make our planning scheme fit theirs, when the matter of fact is that Richard Wynne has never left Northmore. He only ever came to the land once because he got lost. So what would he know? What would he know about what we need into the future when he spent half his life building commission flats in Kensington? I don't know what in English Street. So it's all yours, Councillor Sullivan.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And acting chair, Mayor elevated. It's hard to dispute the argument that Councillor Tatchell has put forward, and clearly has demonstrated tonight there is a demand and this application has merit. But basically it's a spot rezoning. And the experience of spot rezoning, they generally fail. They don't pass the initial threshold of what's the strategic justification for it, that's all. I think this is an excellent proposal, one that has great merit, but I think it's going to fail at the threshold. So that's my issue with it. And it's a matter of, sure, you can tick all the boxes through the planning scheme, as Councillor Tatchell has go through a planning scheme, every policy has about half a dozen dot points, any of which you can sort of use to justify your argument. Some are actually contradictory to one another, which is an interesting thing. So my position is that it would be better to make sure that we have all the ammunition to get this one over the line and do it right, rather than go off now and get rejected, and then we still will come back. And if I was a betting man, and I had some time then, I would put money on that this may not get up if it were to go ahead, because of the fact there is no strategic justification. Fundamentally, it's a spot rezoning, and Spring Street, we may or may not like them, but we have to live with them. And the processes are they do not support something without strategic justification. I know the proponent has put forward a lot of documents and prepared that, but there's nothing in our planning scheme that gives it a trigger point for this to actually proceed at this juncture. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dudley.
I would support the need for rural living. That's why people come to live in rural. I think that Councillor Batchel has said more than enough on the subject and has argued it well, so I am voting for it.
Councillor Thatcher, I'll get you to finish off with the vote.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so look, there's no doubt I respect Councillor Sullivan's judgment. I've got an issue with this one in particular, only because opportunity knocks every now and it's very, very difficult to get developers, especially people that have a different view on development than the normal people that drive in with a bulldozer and drive out of a truck that you never see them again. What I like about this particular one, and I took some convincing by the way, because I had some issues with it in the beginning, but once I read the document, I started to realise where this was going. And the point is that for someone to put their hand in their pocket and say, I'm prepared to put a sewage system under the Western Freeway that gives us an opportunity on the northern side of the land, it can't be ignored. It certainly can't be ignored. I mean, for the last 5 years we've lobbied consistently to try and get sewage into our small town strategy and make sure that those small towns are given those same opportunities to take the imbalance out of the Great Tobacco Marsh versus the rest of the Shire. 72% of the Shire is Crown land anyway. And the fact that some of it needs to be opened up, if we're going to run out of farming, open that up. But at the end of the day, you can't keep sending people and expect them to live on top of each other. It's not what they're looking for. It's not what they want out of life. So, in order of our area, and what I believe in as a person, and what my beliefs, that the kids grow up in the land, grow up pretty good. I mean, we don't have a lot of problems here because they're given opportunities to work with rural kids. Anyone who grew up on land understands that. They're usually hard working. They've all got jobs. They tend to stick together. They play footy together. They become part of the community. I would encourage that all day. What we're doing today is we're urbanising the rural peri-urban sector. We're stopping all that. We're stopping the motorbikes. We're stopping the horses. And then if we keep stopping and we don't have an ulterior plan or an alternative for those people who are coming, we've run out of time. If we take this to 2021, for another 2 years, 2023, what's going to happen to those people in the meantime? They're going to buy somewhere else. And let's go. We can be bureaucrat driven by planning, or we can be market driven. At the end of the day, we need to have a balanced approach. And the market is telling us in Balan that they don't want to, everyone that comes here saying, I want 5 acres. I want to wear out a Victor every 6 months. I want to drive my kids mad to go and feed the horse. I want to make sure that I've got to go and buy a bloody horse flat and a saddle and pay all for all this gear. They want to do all that. Let them do it. I've been there. The kid that wants a motorbike, they want to be able to do it where they're not driving the neighbours crazy. The guy that's in St Albans that says, look, I want to set up an excavation business with a 5-tonne excavator, he's got to go somewhere. I'd rather have him here throwing his dough at our economy than being caught up in some bureaucratic system that says you're going to have to wait 4 or 5 years on a lease to Hopeton Park. That'll get built in and it'll get thrown out of there. If we do this now, what do they say? Seize the day. Seize the day. Because the bloke's got his hand in his pocket, he's got the cheque in his hand, and there's an old marketer, an old salesman, let me tell you, if they've got the check in the end, grab the money and run. Because you'll put that sewer under that for you and no one else will do it. Because no other developer would be crazy enough to spend that much money on 42 lots. Please, let's take this opportunity. Let's take this as a good one. Thank you.
I'll now put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? It's carried.
Right,
I'm going to the recommendation of page 149, Mr. Mayor.
thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Do I have a second? Where Mr. Summers?
Mr. Inaction.
Any objections? Those in favour? So carried. Right, we'll move on to, where are we? 12th one.
I'm happy
Oh,
to
committee
make
groups,
a
good one, please.
recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor, do I second it?
I'll second with-
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Any objections?
Second with-
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Sorry.
Just
Yeah.
scanning the list of applications and applicants that have come in, some of them seem to be agencies that actually get funding from government, semi-government. I thought that we were of a view, and maybe I'm wrong, I'll defer if I am, that in fact that there was a position of council that in fact it was really, we weren't going to be funding programs for government, semi-government type agencies, and yet there's three there that I would have thought that on one page, yeah, that sort of fit within that category. So when and if did we change that policy?
Mr. Ward, do you want that one?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the policy hasn't in fact changed. There was a discussion at the AOC recently around that. The projects that are listed there are not actually, two of them are not from government agencies. They're actually auspiced by a government agency, but they're run by a separate group within the community. And the other one is for flagpoles at a school, I believe. We've since checked with the government, and it's not a mandatory requirement that they actually fly the Aboriginal flag. So this is a discretionary program. The policy actually says that as council will consider applications if they have a wider, broader community benefit. So it's just a matter that we officers in reviewing those applications considered that they met the selection criteria and were prepared to put them up to council for consideration.
Just something, could we actually get that whole thing reviewed again? Because it sort of concerns me that our ratepayers are sort of basically funding government agencies and semi-government agencies. I just have a problem with that. I just think it's not really that's not the intention. Maybe the letter, but it's certainly not the spirit of the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on page 160, not recommended Baxmarsh Aquatic Centre Community Consortium to go towards Baxmarsh Flower and Garden Show that's conducted annually. Noting that they only just fell short by 5.07 of the recommended score of 70. Have we got? Have we met the threshold, or is there still money in that kitty to include the flower show?
There is still money available within the community grants program that hasn't been allocated. In that particular instance, that application was deemed to not comply with the selection criteria because of a number of factors. It's an ongoing event that is run annually. It's not a new event. It doesn't add significantly to the new opportunities available to the community. It's a fundraiser primarily for a future project that is not yet confirmed. So there was some questions around whether or not council should be supporting that application.
So subsequent to that one, so that future project is not entirely funded by council, because council cannot entirely fund an indoor swimming pool. But it's a council-led project anyway, is it not? And the money fundraised at this particular event, ultimately in the years to come, hopefully maybe next term, but in the years to come, we're going to see return on investment in the future.
Is that a question or a statement, Councillor?
More a statement.
Yeah, I thought so. Councillor Dudley.
Through the Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to ask if Councillor Bingham is requesting an amendment to the motion.
Councillor Dudzik is correct. I'll be looking amending this motion to include the Backsmarsh Flower and Garden Show.
I would accept that amendment.
So the bring new motion first.
Oh, no, you just add that one.
I don't accept my second motion.
I'll let you go.
But you
Oh,
can
sorry.
move
You'll
a
have to-
separate, you have to.
Yeah, stop, please. You'll have to either move a new motion, leaving that the argument for a second.
Apologies for walking out of the room, but when obviously it got moved and seconded before I come back, I should have looked at the board. Yes, I'd like to move an amendment to the motion, and that
So this will be a new motion, because our motion's a lot,
That's an amendment.
amendment to the
so.
motion.
You're amending it, but you don't accept it.
No.
He's doing a formal amendment.
Sorry, yeah, my apologies.
My amendment would be to include the Backsmarsh Aquatic Centre and Community Consortium for a total of $3,000 to go towards hosting the Backsmarsh Flower and Garden.
And I would second that from the Mayor.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Then we need to include the flower show grant.
Okay. We're going to go on, so you will move and second the amendment, and then argue that, and then come back to the original. So, first and second, obviously, there's a difference.
No, you can do it, it's a formal amendment.
Yes, yes, that's right. Yes. So, are there any objections?
Hang on. So who was actually seconding the amendment?
Will that be from the Mayor?
Didn't the councillor does it move the original?
Yes. And then you seconded it.
Yes.
And then Councillor Bingham tried to amend it,
But then
which you can't, because you will second it.
Yeah, the mover of the original motion can't second an amendment.
That's right. So my view was that the council would be bringing up a new motion that would have to be started again. Is that the end, right?
No, because, no,
Sorry. Could you do that, please? Thank you. We're just going to check if the move of the original motion can.
move an amendment,
Can.
second amendment.
Yeah, that's
I
exactly.
don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think
Councillor Thatcher, I believe that is the case. I'll be looking for a seconder from Councillor Keir.
What?
well, I don't think you can request a second from somebody else.
Can I ask you a second? Will you second
No
that?
request, I'm looking.
It's been seconded by Councillor Keegan.
All right, that's okay. We're back legal again. All right, so we moved to second. I assume there's an objection. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Bingham, you better have the motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Stop for a sec. Stop. We're voting on the amendment to the motion. To become the motion. Yes, that's correct. Yes. Have we got we haven't got a through yet, though. Yeah, we haven't got,
Where is, but it's just added in. This is page 167, is the recommendation.
we don't have to argue that.
160.
The flower show, the Backsmarsh Flower and Garden Show get $3,000 as well as the Marshall.
No, he's only second the amendment, so we have to give him the favour. Yes, yes.
was going to wait until that conversation.
Sorry.
That's right. I was just going to wait. My previous statement almost, actually there was a little question there, but my previous statement it basically led me to preamble into this debate here. The Fleur and Garden Show, yes, it has been ongoing for a number of years, and the whole purpose, or the primary purpose of such an event is to fundraise towards, you know, in the future, the indoor swimming pool. Whilst they're not going to raise $30 million, certainly every single little bit helps, and I'm looking at this as a return on investment. We can either invest all our money into government-run agencies, or we can put some money to expand an event that we will potentially see a return on investment when we eventually look at the indoor swimming pool.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council put in place a process for the assessment of community grants to bring relativity to all the categories that exist. The threshold point at which applications are assessed is 70%. 70%. Council agreed that this should be an appropriate amount rather than just delve up the dollars depending upon how many projects come in, because there needs to be some relativity between the three category groups that exist. This group only scored 64.93, a whole 5 points. It wasn't a smidgen below, not a smidgen. It's a fairly substantial amount below the threshold at what council itself adopted. If we're going to throw it all out, why bother getting officers to assess applications and come to this table? We may as well just sort of sort it out on the night. Don't bother with it. It's just not the way we should be doing business. Why then are we doing it for this? And it may be a good I don't know, but it didn't stack up based on the assessment criteria that we gave to officers to assess applications. And 70% was the threshold which council decided that we stick with. And if there's money's left over, it rolls over into the next thing. So that we get quality projects coming up for assessment and funding. We set the criteria, officers use the assessment, and by the own volition in the column it says it does not comply. It doesn't even comply with our own guidelines. If we're going to do this in an ad hoc sort of a fashion, we may as well not bother with the officers. We'll just sit in the room and just delve it up ourselves. This is not how we should be seen to be doing good business in good governance. Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Every now and again, a project comes up who's got a hell of a lot of merit. I put this in the same class as the Lowell railway station when we did that, and there was a couple of things there that was against council policy. So I commend everyone to vote for Councillor Bingham's recommendation.
The council officers do make recommendations based on a criteria, but at the end of the day, those recommendations come to council and we're asked to say, do we support them? If they wouldn't come to council if it was that black and white. Otherwise it would be a case of rubber stamping, and here it's been identified that this particular event is a worthy event, and it is a fantastic event for the Bacchus Marsh community. I was disappointed when I read the report that they weren't getting funding, and I see benefits for so many people of all ages. School kids enter the Bacchus Marsh Garden Show, older people enter it. No matter who you are, you can enter something in the Bacchus Marsh Flower and Garden Show. So at the end of the day, it really is a community event, and at the end of the day, council are here for the community, and we should be supporting that event.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If there wasn't.
Just before we go to a vote, I'll ask a question. So you don't close off the amendment vote? The amendment debate. So my question is, there would have been, to Mr. Ward, before we go to the vote,
Mr Chair. There were other applications that didn't meet the threshold and scored very similar scores to the application we're referring to. So yes, yeah, it would be unclear as to what advice we would give those people as to why their application was unsuccessful.
So is it fair to say, Mr Wood, just to double up on that question, is that the people that missed out would have every right to come back to you and say, why did this one get it when they had the same score but didn't comply, and then others that did comply couldn't get it?
Generally, through you, Mr Mayor, when we advise applicants of the outcome of their application, they generally are seeking some feedback as to the rationale and the reasoning behind why their application was either unsuccessful. So yes, it would be difficult to determine what advice we would give them in this instance.
If this motion's lost, do you want to foreshadow another motion? If this amendment is lost? No. Okay, so we'll take it to vote. Those in favour? Those against? So, alright, so that was just one. So, yeah. So we need to foreshadow a motion, which is the other motion.
So now I'd like to move the motion that is on the board, Mr Mayor.
And I would like to accept it if I'm allowed.
Okay, we're voting on the original motion again, the amended original motion again. We moved and second, we have any objections, yes?
What's going on?
Yeah, we moved and second, we've got an objection, right? You've got the floor again.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We've already been into some debate, so I'll keep it nice and short. Just to finish off, if carrying on from the debate of the amendment, if there wasn't any merit in this particular project, we would realistically be seeing a score below 40%. So obviously this project does have some merit, and this particular project scored slightly lower due to the comment that it's an ongoing event. If this was a new event, we would be seeing a threshold of above 70%. That is the reality. Clearly there is merit on that project.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I said a lot of it before, but I think it's a process. And I'd urge councillors to consider what's being, what you're asking here. You're basically losing face with the community. We put in place a process dealing with this on all the ranges of community grants that we have across Maroubra Shire. And all of a sudden we pluck one out, which is, as I said before, it's not just a little bit out. This is a substantial amount. We put in place the process and asking officers to actually assess it. The professional officers have assessed it, and this is well below. I understand what council is saying, but you have to abide by the process, because if you don't, you have nothing to stand behind when people start pointing the finger and saying, oh, why did that one get up? What about ours? What defence do we have? Oh, well, now that was a good project. They're going to say, well, it didn't stack up by your own officers. So we really run the risk of losing putting our reputational risk here, because the community will say, what a joke. Thank you.
Councillor Dudley.
The Backsmash Garden Show, it is a fabulous event. It's a community event, and maybe our criteria needs to be changed if it doesn't meet our criteria. There's clearly something wrong. And council is here to make decisions. There's no need for us to come here if everything is to be decided by officers and we can't provide our community input.
Councillor Skinner.
I'm of the same opinion as Councillor Dudley, that the Backsmash Garden Show has got a lot of merit, and maybe our criteria needs to be looked at, because it seems to me that it should have a higher score than what it's got. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the way it's been scored, but I'm saying maybe we might look at the way that the criteria that we use.
Can I ask you a question, Councillor Kerr? I'll just check with governments to take over this.
Yes,
So if there was other applicants that were at the same rate or above that line, are you suggesting that they don't want to go through the process? Is that what you're saying? That won't be just pull, the councillors can just pull one, and those people.
No, I'm saying this is a very special occasion.
I think you missed the question though. What do we do with the ones that were all above the line, but below the criteria? What do we do with those? All right, Councillor Bing, plus
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just wrap papers up. Return on investment. Council will see the funds raised from this particular event in years to come. And I've been in council for just over 2.5 years now, and community grants come up all the time, and I can't remember the exact number, but I am certain particular ones that just fall shy of the threshold have been pulled up and have been included. I've never once heard that argument that we can't just cherry pick community grants.
Okay, those in favour? Those against? Sorry, where are you? Councillor? No, I'll do it again. Those in favour? Those against? I'll just want to know.
For a division.
Yeah. Those in favour, please stand. Those against? Thank you. Did we get all this? What else I'd like to know from the chair, that we've got a full council ask for a rescission on that. So. Yeah, so we cover it. Is that going in? Okay, so we're going to go in. Sorry, we just have to check the government, sorry. Thank you. Where was it? Righto, moving right along. Okay, no more supports. 12.1, let's move into assembly again.
Happy to move, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Second. Any questions? Please.
A couple of others with regards to the Gordon Hall Committee. I do note in their minutes that they're proposing that 2 new community members come onto the group. Will that come to council for endorsement?
Yeah, we've spoken to the wrong one. Yes. So we're on assembly councils.
Well, I'm just anticipating I'm ahead of the play, Mr. Mayor. as you know.
I know, you're ahead of the game. Look at your time. All right, we'll go back to where we were. We were in the assembly council. Those in favour? So carried. Now we must go to questions.
Okay, well, I'll move the recommendation and also follow up with a question, if I may. This is 12.2. Just in the minutes of the Gordon Hall Committee, I do note that they're proposing that there be 2 community members and be nominated to go forward. Will they come to council for ratification? Because usually they need to be endorsed by council as well. To give those people voting status, they need to be endorsed by council, sure.
Mr. Moore's going to use it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, right to the question.
They'll turn the tape off.
The other one relates to the same board committee. I do note that they've surrendered their incorporation association. So just to why they have done that.
What we might do is, can we take that on notice?
Yeah, sure.
Because I think that's probably something that's not going to affect.
No.
We'll take that on notice. So, any other questions?
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We have any questions?
No.
advisory committees and council reports, please. Council Duffy, second. Council Kerr with objections. Those in favour? So carried. Righto, now we move on to, Council Bingham. We'll move on to 3.1, when you have a notice of motion, Council Bingham.
I have two tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Well, we'll start with the first one. We won't get to
Yeah, so 13.1, and it should be familiar with council, as we actually talked about this last council meeting. So the council managed meeting room hire rates. So as you can remember, the Councillor Dudzik did bring a motion in regards to looking at loading deck. I did foreshadow for this meeting that I'll be bringing a motion to include all council managed meeting rooms within the Shire, as yourself, Councillor Tatchell and Councillor Tui, apologies, did mention that there is a possibility that other community user groups within the Shire could very well be facing the same issue.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please? Thank you. Any objections?
Well, I've just got a question.
Yeah, I've got a couple myself.
Given that a lot of these facilities of council, and maybe Council Bingham will assist, council has delegated to committees of management to run on our behalf. Is it proposed that we only deal with those that council has direct management of, or those groups that council has delegated the responsibility to other groups? Because that revenue does affect them. I mean, if we start, so I suppose it might be a question to Council Bingham.
Sorry, I think this is Council Bingham on this one. It's his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the notice of motion is specific to council managed meeting room hire rates. Take one of the committees that I'm on, for instance, the public hall, Section 86 committee, and they look after it. We don't manage the public hall. So if there was any issue with community groups, they would take it up to that body that's managing that hall.
So your answer is that only council?
Only direct council managed, as what's in the heading of the notice of motion.
Do we know what those buildings are?
Sorry, yeah, I'll take that.
Now, clear, Mayor, we'll be able to identify those buildings.
Any other questions? I've just got one. When this item first came up at the last meeting, it was obviously Councillor Dunson's motion that she put up as a non-motion. What I'm concerned with is that I think it should have remained in Councillor Dunson's position. And so I think we have a motion situation for that. I think the two councils need to get together and work it out, because I know that some of this was put on social media during the week, which concerns me.
Yeah, the motion's been on social media.
Miracle News.
Excuse me, it was not. A copy of this was on social media and comments about.
Yeah, that's I'm just making that point, but I think we just need to clarify that.
Not by him, but in Furman.
Okay, so we move to the second. Do we have any objections? No? Those in favour? So carried. I'm just trying to avoid missing any issues today. That's all stuff. Right, you've got a second one. 3.2.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in regards to the fire service levy, I'm only asking for a report. Not a report, for council to write to the Minister for Police and Emergency Services, the Honourable Lisa Neville. I'll go through it. One, writes to the Minister for Police and Emergency Services, the Honourable Lisa Neville, MP, seeking clarification of A, the future of the fire service levy, B, what impacts, if any, the fire service reform may have for the ratepayers of Miracle Shire Council, C, how the fire service levy has collected through movable rates and totaling $14.871 million over the last 5 years. I'll just reiterate that one. $14.871 million over the last 5 years has been allocated, and what is the current and future percent of levy raised to be returned to the CFA infrastructure within Moorabool Shire Council? Go back to my preamble. Whilst the fire service reform, and it has been mentioned that most likely the fire service levy will not change, but as we all know from experience, what is said one day may very well change the next. So I would like to see clarification. This is the whole purpose of this. I did not realise that it was actually $14.8 million until CEO did some research. But that is an astronomical amount of money raised out of just only about 13,000 rateable properties in the last 5 years. I want to know how much of that has been allocated to the local CFA infrastructure, because off face value, we don't see many new trucks. When we see new fire stations, they're not fire stations, they're fire sheds. So the question is, and our ratepayers are already crying out that our rates are too high. The question is, should we be paying for inner city metropolitan fire, or now Fire Rescue Victoria, when eventually that reform takes place?
Okay, we have a motion on the table. We have a second. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Any objections? Those in favour? So carried. Okay, we also want to move to the Mayor's report. Are there any questions regarding the I'll move to receive. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Any objections? Those in favour? So carried. Right, we'll go to Councillor reports. Let's start with you, please, Councillor Sullivan.
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bing.
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Sunday, the 2nd of June, I went to the relaunch of the Victoria history of the Shire of Ballan, and it was a very, very enjoyable afternoon. On the 13th to the 6th, I went to the Grow West implementation meeting, and on the 18th of June, I went to the Ballan District Chamber of Commerce Business Excellence Awards. And once again, it was an excellent night.
I just wanted to say that on the 7th of June, I went to Steve McGee, our Member of Parliament's barbecue, where he talked about the state budget, and he spoke about the funding that he was giving to the Melton Shire, but he also looked us in the eye and said he was thinking of Moorabool as well. And since that time, he has allocated funding to Darling Primary School, I see, which is very positive. And also at that, there were lots of people there, past mayors of Moorabool. Del Leggett was there. And there was a person called Barry who said that he's still waiting on Councillor Bingham fulfilling a bet from losing the election.
Would you like me to fill you in, Mr. Mayor?
No. Inappropriate.
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Can I have someone second, please? Thank you. Those in favour? So carried. We'll go straight to the business. Councillor Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could we get report/advice on the definition used of community groups by the council in assessing community grants, please? Well, I know full motion, just can we get something? Please.
No worries. Councillor Bing?
No urgent business, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr?
No urgent business, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Dudley?
I'd like to ask for a report on council use of social media and whether or not councillors are following the county code of conduct.
Thank you, Councillor. Comment on it? We will see back to social media.
I'll fill you in.
Right, that's enough. Yeah, right, we need to.
Could I suggest a 5-minute break before we move into?
Thank you. Got someone second? So carried. Yeah, well, not a real I'll give you that, I'll give you that. What about? Sorry. That's all right. I am sorry. Yeah, exactly, yeah.